Good.
My name's Carter, and our first term is Indus Civilization. We chose this term because after watching the documentary, we became really interested about what made it so different from previous ancient civilizations.
My name is Amelia, and the other term that we're using is ritual sacrifice. This one's really interesting to me. I've watched a few documentaries on it.
My name's Christian. Our next term is talking about the caste system. I'm really interested in this one because just talking about how like their social status is and like growing up in that society is pretty cool to me. So yeah.
Alright. My name's John, and I chose the Mughal Empire because I was just really interested in the Mughal Empire when we studied it in class, and that's about it. Okay.
So our first term is the Indus Civilization. The Indus Civilization was mainly known for its earliest urban planning around 3300 BCE to 1300 BCE. Some of its key features include their writing system, like the Indus script, their economy, such as their form of currency, technology, such as the cotton weaving machine, and religion and culture. We're going to take a deeper look into each of these categories.
Yeah, so urban planning was one of the most important features in the Indus civilization. The cities throughout ancient India were well planned with grid, like streets and sophisticated drainage systems, including sewage systems, which were the first of its kind, and standardized brick buildings. These standardized brick buildings showcase the advanced engineering and urban design. Another important feature of this, of the Indus people, were that they engaged in extensive trade. These trades were locally and distant regions such as Mesopotamia. Between these populations, the people traded goods such as beads, textiles, and precious metals. So the advancements in the civilization allowed for boosts in such as the economy and writing systems. What made these so strikingly different from ancient civilizations?
The main thing that made the Indus civilization so different was their economy. The Indus civilization economy was largely agricultural. They produced crops like wheat, barley, and cotton being cultivated there. They also had a thriving craft industry, which allowed for advancements in producing pottery, seals, and jewelry. Another big thing the Indus civilization had was the writing system. The Indus Valley had a script known as the Indus script, and though it remains undeciphered, it appeared on seals, pottery, and other sort of artifacts during that time period.
Okay. And then another important thing about the Indus civilization was their religion and culture. And while the specifics of their religion are not like fully understood and not all the way studied, there's evidence of polytheistic belief system with numerous figurines and seals depicting like what these gods were. They were like animals and just different creatures, and the Great Bath of Mohenjo-daro suggests possible ritual bathing practices. And then we have the decline of the Indus Valley civilization, which remains a mystery, and through factors such as environmental changes like droughts, changes in trade routes, and potential shifts in river systems have suggested also possible causes of the decline. And then going off that, the Indus civilization began in South Asia, in the Indus Valley, not the Ganga, and the Rakcha valleys. And the Indus Valley consists of two parts, two cities, the Harappa and the Mohenjo-daro, which I mentioned before. And then what are the differences, if any, between these two cities?
These cities actually aren't very different. Instead, they're somewhat similar to one another. This is because they both include a lower city divided by major avenues into city blocks, a raised mound to the west of the lower city, and a warehouse adjacent to the old bed of the river. These cities house the majority of the Indus population and is home to some rich history.
Yeah, and going along with talking about the population of the people of these civilizations, based on agricultural finds and research, the Indus civilization must have been numerous. One surprising factors that we found about this was that the country people outnumbered urban homeowners by 4 times in modern India. This is strikingly different from today's day and age, where downtown cities house the majority of the population. Another one of the most important features of the people during this civilization was the language. It was discovered through ancient scriptural finds that the Dravidian language would be our best guess as to what the native speakers used to communicate with one another. We estimate this because the islands of Dravidian language in the Indus Valley and Ganga valleys.
So some other facts about the Indus civilization is that there were no monuments or temples, there were carefully planned cities, trade routes, technology advancements like sewage. The principal crops were wheat and barley. And then involving religion, Hinduism culture must have continued and shaped that of later India. The Indus religion appears to have had images of divinities, which is the existence of temples is not proven, embracing a pantheon partly animal and partly human in form. Speaking of religion, what was the importance of ritual sacrifice?
Okay, so ritual sacrifice begins in the Vedic age, and with the religion of sacrifice that is preserved in the Vedic literature of the Brahmins, which is basically just the first class of social roles in the caste system. And some people call this religion Brahmanism. And as we have seen, cosmology consists of a plethora of divinities, mostly associated with the sky, called the Devas and the Father or ancestors. The key aims of its adherents are to promote the health and the welfare of the family in this life and after death, and to reach heaven of the world of the fathers.
Yeah, and what's cool about this is that the means for doing so is the sacrifice in its many kinds and following the central conceptation of dramas and as an internal religious law that prescribes the duties of one's social station in terms of the four varnas. It is the elaboration of the dramas that constructs the enduring contribution of the sacrificial religion.
So the Vedic sacrifice continues to this day in the central features of the Hindu marriage ritual and some other domestic rituals associated with the life cycle and the care of feeding of the ancestors. The Vedic tradition was further developed and elaborated after the Vedic period and throughout the classical period in the Dharmastra text we discussed in the last chapter.
This connects to the caste system because these sacrifices are done to get good karma, which directly relates to the caste system. And it also talks about how both human and animal sacrifices were practiced, and these were judged by the gods by the scale and size of these sacrifices. So speaking of the caste system, what was it exactly?
So the Indus civilization had a class system and was highly structured with the ruling class, the merchants, and laborers. Some evidence of the caste system in the Indus civilization was their housing differences. If you lived in this society and you had a much larger house, you were considered to be wealthy and in high social class. But if you had a smaller house and you were considered to be lower class and are usually in lower areas of the cities, you were considered to be like lower class and less wealthy. How did the caste system impact Indian society?
The main way the caste system impacted Indus civilization was that it served as motivation for lower class citizens. However, many times the class you were born into is the class you stayed in. So if you were born into a poor class, it was really hard to work your way up. There are actually 5 caste classes, each representing each social class. They are Brahmas, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, Shudras, and Pakamarmas, which is the untouchables.
Okay, and then right off that, this is our last term. This is the Mughal Empire. So the Mughal Empire was created by the Turco-Mongol group that invaded India in 1526. And then over the 16th century, the Mughals gained control over most of India. And efforts to create a partnership between Hindus and Muslims basically created this Indo-Persian culture.
Yeah, so the Mughal Empire, which ruled most of the Indian subcontinent from the early 16th to the mid 19th century, had significant and lasting effects on the region. Some of the most enduring legacies include cultural synthesis and architecture, the arts and the architecture. So this is like the Mughals are renowned for their architectural achievements, blending Persian, Turkic, and Indian styles. Iconic structures such as the Taj Mahal, Red Fort, and Jama Masjid symbolize Mughal architectural grandeur. This fusion influenced later Indian architecture. And then we go to painting and craftsmanship. So the Mughal miniature paintings and intrinsic craftsmanship like textiles, carpets, and jewelry all left a lasting impact on art forms throughout the subcontinent.
And then with governance, the Mughals established a centralized system of administration, which included a well-organized bureaucracy, taxation systems, and provincial governance. This system influenced later Indian rulers and shaped the administrative practices in South Asia for centuries.
Yeah, and with this, the use of Persian as the court language further solidified its dominance in administration, culture, and education in the subcontinent for a long period. The next thing with the Mughal Empire is religious and social integration. There's a lot of religious tolerance here. Under rulers like Akbar, the Mughal Empire was relatively tolerant of different religions, including Hinduism, Islam, and others. Akbar's policy of Din-e-Ilahi, a Sunni religion, and efforts to engage in dialogue between different faiths led to groundwork for religious coexistence in the region. But however, the Mughal Empire also faced challenges of religion and political conflict, especially under later rulers. But the synthesis of Islamic and Indian traditions influenced the cultural landscape for generations.
And then the another one of the key features of the Mughal Empire is their trade and economy. They basically revitalized trade and commerce both internally and with Europe and the Middle East and South Asia. So they traded with basically all of Europe. The empire's rich agriculture economy and thriving urban centers contributed to a booming market for luxury goods, textile, and spices, which were popular at the time. And then the Mughal influence helped integrate India into the global economy and set the stage later for dominance of the British colonial economy.
The next is language and literature. So as we were talking about earlier, the Indus civilization was a Dravidian language, but the Mughal Empire actually helped popularize Urdu, a language that emerged as a mix of Persian, Arabic, and local Indian languages such as Dravidian. It became an important language of culture, pottery, and literature, and it continues to be spoken by millions across India today.
Yeah, the Mughal era poetry and literature with notable figures like Misra, Galba, and Kibir influenced subsequent literature traditions in India.
And then we have the economic and technological developments in the Mughal Empire. Basically, under the Mughals, agriculture productivity improved with the introduction of new techniques and crops, including cotton and sugar. And the empire also fostered advancements in art, textiles, and engineering. These innovations in military technology, such as the use of gunpowder artillery, played a role in shaping Indian warfare in this early modern period. And then we have the decline and the legacy of in British colonialism. The weakening of the Mughal Empire in the 18th century paved way for the rise of regional powers and eventually British colonialism. The British East Indian Company capitalized on the fragmentation of the Mughal rule and basically took control of India. The lasting Mughal legacy is still visible in the way Indian society and culture developed under this British rule, and particularly through the education systems, architecture, and the governance models. And then
So there's also a social and cultural influence. In Mughal era social practices, festivals, and culinary traditions also left a deep imprint. For example, Mughalai cuisine, which features dishes like biryani, kebabs, and rich gravies remains popular in South Asia. The fusion of Mughal culture with local traditions laid the foundation for the diverse multicultural society that exists in India today. In sum, the Mughal Empire left a profound impact on the social, political, cultural, and economic fabric of South Asia, and its influence are still felt in many aspects of life across the region today.
Yeah, so that's basically our 4 topics. What did y'all find to be like the most, like, I guess like crazy fact that we learned? Mine would be the Indus civilization. Like I think it's kind of crazy. Like they still like throughout all these years don't know like exactly what language they used. But it's just like they kind of had like a guess estimate, which is kind of crazy. But that's what I found to be the most interesting.
I also found the Indus civilization to be the most interesting. I remember in school I learned a lot about Mesopotamia, and so I thought it was going to be really similar when we learned about it in class, but it wasn't as similar, which was like kind of surprising and good to learn about.
Yeah, I think learning about the Mughal Empire and like their religion and how the ruler Akbar was just very like tolerant with religion and like just allowed like religious freedom, just kind of how we have it in America, until different rulers tried to come and just destroy that foundation that they had.
My most interesting thing I think was probably just like the impact of the caste system and how it like played such a role on society and like trying to get people to like be functioning members of society and like want to do better for themselves. But it was also just like kind of a little bit of this like power grab that like the leaders had where they could just, you know, put anybody in any class. So
Yeah, I think the caste system is crazy too, because like it says like if you were in a certain class, it was really hard to get to a different one. I think that's so different from today. Like everybody just strives to get to that next level. And I think like that's just crazy that back then it was just if you were born in that class, you didn't really have a chance of getting anywhere else. So I think that's really different from today's society.
Yeah, like today in society we have I don't know if you guys have ever heard of it, vertical and horizontal mobility. Which is, okay, so vertical is where you can, like, with generations you move up in social class or down in social class. Horizontal is where you stay the same as, like, your parents or your grandparents or whatever. So in the caste system, okay.
Yeah, I think another point that came up to my mind was with ritual sacrifices, like how they when we talk about how they had human and animal sacrifices practice, just like to like worship the gods and everything. Like I find that kind of crazy because we don't hear that in today's society.
Yeah.
We see it like with some texts like in the Bible about animal sacrifices, but not with human sacrifices. So just to like do that and like to try to like gain something, some reward with the gods, is kind of like interesting.
Yeah, for sure. Jumping off of that, I think like what you said is that's crazy, like the human sacrifices. But I think it also said like in judgment by the scale of the sacrifices. So it's just like how many people were they just like throwing up there?
Yeah.
Like, cause that's kind of crazy. And I also like I'm kind of curious about what allowed like they just choose random people to like sacrifice, or is it like criminals, or like what got you to the point where you were like, all right, we're gonna kill this guy and just like offer him up to our gods?
Yeah.
So I think that's really interesting too.
another thing I think is kind of interesting is like just like how do you choose someone to sacrifice?
Yeah.
Like, would you rather choose someone that's like not a functioning member, or would you rather choose someone that's like important and like actually will improve the scale of the ritual, if you know what I mean?
Yeah, I want to know like the limits of it. Like, was it just like guys, or did they go after like women and children too? Because that's kind of like.
Well, they
I
probably
don't know.
did go after women and children because think about it, for like the time period, like it was very normalized to do rituals. Like we think
Yeah,
it's
that's
really
true.
weird now, but like it was normal for them. And so like, yeah, like it's weird for us now, but they probably did go after women and children because of how normalized it was.
Yeah, I think
most likely.
it also says that in the book it talked about how the Vedic sacrifice continues to this day. I'm just like, I don't know how that's like legal.
I think it continues in different forms.
Yeah, but like if you're sacrificing, aren't you still like killing animals and stuff?
Yeah.
It's just like, I don't know, I feel like it's really different from anywhere else in the world. Like, you don't really see that anymore.
Yeah.